Real psychological power begins the moment you stop believing that every emotion deserves an immediate response. Most people think self-control means suppressing how they feel. It doesn't. It means refusing to let your first impulse make your final decision. There is a brief, almost invisible space between what happens to you and what you choose to do about it. Most people never notice it. Life happens. They react. Someone criticizes them. They react. Someone ignores them. They react. Someone disagrees. They react. They live as if every external event holds a remote control connected directly to their emotions. But one of the greatest psychological discoveries of the 20th century revealed something extraordinary. Human freedom is not found in controlling the world around us. It exists in that tiny space between stimulus and response. Within that space lies the ability to choose who you become in the next moment. Modern neuroscience helps explain why this is so difficult. Deep inside the brain sits the amygdala, an ancient survival system designed to detect danger before conscious thought even begins. It doesn't ask whether an insult truly matters. It only asks one question. Should I fight, flee, or defend myself? Its purpose is speed, not wisdom. But another region of the brain tells a different story, the prefrontal cortex. This is where planning, judgment, emotional regulation, and long-term thinking emerge. It allows you to step outside your first impulse and ask a far more intelligent question. What response will serve me tomorrow, not just satisfy me today? This is the difference between impulsive people and powerful people. Powerful people are not emotionally numb. They feel frustration, disappointment, anger, fear, just like everyone else. The difference is simple. Emotion arrives first, reason arrives second, and they wait for reason. That single habit changes everything. Imagine receiving a message that feels deeply disrespectful. Your fingers immediately move toward the keyboard. Every sentence forms effortlessly. Every argument feels brilliant. But instead of pressing send, you close the phone. You take a walk. An hour later, you return. Half the message disappears. Some sentences are rewritten. Others are never sent. Nothing outside changed. Only the space between emotion and action. And that space protected both your reputation and your peace. Few people understood this better than Marcus Aurelius. To history, he is remembered as a philosopher-emperor. But philosophy was never an abstract hobby for him. It was survival. Every day he governed an empire stretched across continents. Political rivals whispered against him. Generals demanded impossible decisions. Rumors spread through Rome faster than truth. Every choice risked creating new enemies. An insecure ruler would have answered every criticism personally. He would have punished insults, silenced opponents, mistaken revenge for strength. Marcus chose another path. Historical accounts describe periods when his leadership was questioned, when powerful voices challenged his decisions while the empire faced war, disease, and uncertainty. Pressure surrounded him from every direction. Yet those closest to him repeatedly observed something unusual. He remained remarkably composed. Not because circumstances were easy, but because he refused to allow circumstances to dictate his judgment. He understood that once another person controls your emotional state, they've already gained influence over your decisions. His restraint wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Every calm decision denied chaos another victory. Every measured response strengthened the confidence of those who followed him. The empire wasn't stabilized by emotional reactions. It was stabilized by disciplined judgment. That lesson hasn't changed. Imagine you're presenting months of work during an important meeting. A coworker suddenly interrupts. This analysis is incomplete. The room becomes silent. Every eye shifts toward you. Most people instinctively defend themselves. They speak faster, explain too much. Their voice rises almost without noticing. But someone with genuine self-control does something unexpected. They listen, completely. They allow the criticism to finish. 1 second passes, then another, then a third. Without tension, without visible irritation, they look directly at the speaker and calmly say, "Thank you for your perspective. Let me clarify one point." In that instant, something subtle happens. the emotional temperature of the room drops. The conversation moves away from conflict and back toward reason. Everyone watching receives the same subconscious message. This person cannot be emotionally pushed off balance. Calmness begins to resemble authority, not because calm people speak louder, but because they prove they don't need to. Here's a challenge. For the next 24 hours, whenever someone interrupts you, do nothing. Don't interrupt back. Let them finish completely. Pause for 2 full seconds. Then continue speaking in the same calm tone you had before. Watch carefully what happens. Most people expect resistance. When it never arrives, they often begin listening more carefully than they did before. They stop competing and start paying attention. You'll discover something surprising. Silence isn't passive. It changes the rhythm of the conversation. It quietly shifts control toward the person who refuses to surrender to emotion. But self-control wasn't only admired by philosophers. It was one of the deadliest weapons ever used on the battlefield, because the greatest generals in history understood something that most people still ignore. The first person to lose emotional control has already begun to lose the battle. The first person to lose emotional control has already begun to lose the battle. Few people understood this more deeply than Sun Tzu. For centuries, readers have focused on his strategies, formations, and battlefield tactics. But beneath every military principle lies a quieter lesson. The greatest weapon was never the sword. It was emotional discipline. An inexperienced commander sees an insult as a challenge. He feels compelled to respond immediately. His pride whispers that delay looks like weakness. His anger blinds him to the terrain. His fear shortens his vision. And before the battle even begins, his emotions have already begun making decisions on his behalf. The greatest strategists refused to give their opponents that advantage. They became emotionally invisible. No expression revealed their intentions. No provocation altered their rhythm. No insult dictated their timing. Because the moment your enemy discovers what makes you angry, they no longer need to overpower your body. They only need to manipulate your mind. Modern psychology describes this through emotional triggers. Every person carries invisible buttons. A criticism about intelligence, a challenge to competence, a feeling of rejection, a threat to status. Most people believe they are responding freely. In reality, they're reacting predictably to patterns shaped over years. Manipulative people instinctively search for these weaknesses, sometimes consciously, often without realizing it. They notice what makes your voice rise, what makes your breathing change, what causes you to explain yourself too much. The moment they identify your trigger, they possess a map of your behavior. But someone who cannot be emotionally manipulated becomes something far more difficult to confront: unpredictable. And unpredictability creates power, not because people fear what you'll do, but because they can no longer control what you'll do. Imagine someone repeatedly tries to provoke you during a conversation. They expect irritation. Instead, they receive curiosity. They expect defensiveness. Instead, they receive silence. Suddenly, their strategy collapses. Without predictable reactions, they no longer know which move comes next. History offers countless examples of this principle. Imagine 2 generals standing on opposite sides of a valley before a decisive battle. One is young, brilliant, respected, but ruled by pride. The other is older, patient, almost impossible to read. Before sunrise, a messenger rides across the battlefield carrying an insult from the younger commander's rival. The words are carefully chosen, not to communicate, to provoke. They question his courage, his honor, his reputation before his own soldiers. The young general explodes with anger, without waiting for scouts, without studying the terrain, without allowing his officers to advise him. He orders an immediate attack. His army surges forward in perfect confidence, exactly as his opponent expected. Across the valley, the older commander does nothing. He watches, he waits. He studies the movement of every unit. He notices exhaustion replacing confidence, disorder replacing formation, emotion replacing discipline. Hours pass. The impatient army burns its strength, chasing an enemy that refuses to react. Only when the ground, the weather, and the enemy's fatigue align perfectly does the older commander finally move. The counterattack is swift, precise, decisive. From a distance, it appears that one general defeated another. But the deeper victory happened long before the first soldier advanced. The greatest victory wasn't over the enemy. It was over the commander's own emotions. That lesson extends far beyond battlefields. Imagine someone insults you online. They question your intelligence, mock your opinions, attack your character. Most people respond immediately. One comment becomes another. Minutes become hours. The argument consumes an entire evening. Nothing changes, except their peace of mind. Now imagine another response. You read the comment. You feel the emotional impulse. Then you close the app. You go for a walk. Hours later, you return. The urgency has disappeared. The need to prove yourself no longer exists. And suddenly you realize something surprising. The argument never deserved your attention in the first place. Refusing an immediate reaction isn't weakness. It's emotional independence. It means your inner world is no longer controlled by strangers. The same principle appears in professional life. Imagine you're negotiating an important contract. Without warning, the client becomes aggressive. Their tone sharpens. They criticize your proposal. Most professionals immediately begin defending themselves. They speak faster, explain more, try desperately to regain control. A psychologically disciplined person does the opposite. Their voice becomes quieter. Their breathing slows. Then they ask a single question. Help me understand what's frustrating you most. Something remarkable happens. The emotional atmosphere begins to change. The client feels heard instead of resisted. The conversation shifts from confrontation to cooperation. Calmness becomes more persuasive than any carefully prepared argument. Because people rarely mirror confidence. They almost always mirror emotional stability. Here's a challenge. For the next 7 days, whenever someone tries to provoke you, do not answer immediately. Pause. Take one slow breath. Then ask yourself one question. Am I reacting or am I choosing? Only then decide what to do. Pay attention to what happens. Notice how conversations become calmer, how conflicts lose momentum, how people begin treating you differently. Not because you've become louder, but because you've become harder to manipulate. And in a world where most people are controlled by their impulses, that alone is an extraordinary form of strength. But controlling your emotions is only half of the equation. Because the most powerful people in history mastered something even more difficult. They learned to control their impulses when no one was watching. And that silent discipline changed the course of their lives.